Hey everyone, welcome to Ferocious Finance, presented by MagicGatheringStrat. As always, I'm your host, Ferociousllama. This week I want to take a minute to talk about the economy in Magic Gathering Online. It seems like the whole thing is kind of depressed, and I kind of asked myself, why is this? Because unfortunately we don't know how many people stopped playing, but I can tell you there are a lot less vintage players than there used to be. There's a lot less legacy players than there used to be at the beginning of Vintage Masters, rather. So I think that the switch over to client version 4 has something to do with it, as well as I think that Vintage Masters is ending. And I think what people thought was, they thought, I can play Vintage for cheap. And they thought, and that's true, you can. That's great. The only problem with playing Vintage for cheap is it's kind of relative. Like, I have a Stacks deck that costs $1,200 online. If you look at, in paper, it's like $12,000. So it's cheap, relatively. So I think a lot of people went into Magic Online and said, hey, I'm going to play Vintage for cheap online. So they sign up, they get their account, and they buy a bunch of Vintage Masters. Or they draft, or whatever they like to do. And then they have all these cards, and like, it's prohibitively expensive to have, a paper collection and an online collection, and they're getting out of it. And, a few people have suggested to me, when I kind of posed the question, like, what do you guys think? And I would like to know what you guys think, so go ahead and leave it in the comments. But what's the reason for, when I pose the question, what's the reason for, this really depressed economy? And a lot of people are quitting because of a client change. And I'm sorry, but I have a really, really hard time believing that people are going to quit playing a game that they have thousands and thousands of dollars into over a software change. Like, it's not that huge of a difference once you get used to it. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's like getting a new car. It takes a little bit of getting used to where you can, know how to turn the windshield wipers on without looking at the knob. It just takes a little bit of adjustment. And if that's really something that people are going to quit playing Magic over, whatever, I'm going to capitalize on that. In fact, this week I saw a lot of new collections for sale on eBay. And hey, so if you guys are looking for good deals on Magic Online collections, so you can, get a great deal on a lot of cards, check out those collections. A lot of times there'll be a player who's like, I'm tired of it, don't want to play anymore, whatever the reason is, and they'll let it all go for, a few $100, $500, $1,000, whatever. And but when you look up all the prices, you end up, you have 5-10 times your value right there. So anyway, I just want to talk about the economy a little bit. Tell me what you guys think, because I'm always interested in what you guys have to hear. So let's get started on our buy and sell recommendations for this week, along with a new speculation station recommendation. Alright, our first buy recommendation for this week is Bazaar of Baghdad, currently selling for $4.37. Of course, I'm talking about the Vintage Masters version, not the Arabian Nights version pictured. And one thing I do want to point out is that the buy recommendations this week, you're going to notice there's a common theme, and they are all from Vintage Masters. Because right now, there's nothing better you can buy. And I know, yeah, M15's out, and it's out, relatively... it's been out a relatively decent amount of time to where all the hype for all the cards should have died down. And you're right, it has. But I still think it's too early to get into M15. I really think it's still going to keep going down, because I think that the market takes time to adjust to new things, whatever it may be. And I think right now there's a variety of things impacting the economy, and I'm not saying it's not at all people quitting. It's probably partially people quitting, partially people getting out of Vintage Masters, partially a whole bunch of different things, 100 different factors that we could spend all night talking about. But we're not going to do that because we don't have all night. But anyway, so our buy recommendations this week are all going to be from Vintage Masters. So anything that sees play in Vintage is pretty much, or even in Legacy, is pretty good. In fact, if you can find something that's not restricted in Vintage and is playable in Legacy, those are the best ones. So Bazaar of Baghdad is our first one. It is banned in Legacy, but it's not restricted in Vintage. $4.37. I think it's pretty much the lowest it's been. And you know, he's play. It's a mandatory card. The reason we're recommending this is in order to play Dredge, which is a good deck. It's a competitive deck. It's like a turn 3 combo deck, but it's a good deck. But this is not an optional card in that deck. Every single one, 100% of them will have 4 copies. So that's why we're recommending it. Our next buy recommendation this week, also from Vintage Masters, is Mishra's Workshop. $7.33 currently. It's pretty low, being that they were at $10 for almost their entire time on MTGO. But the reason I'm recommending you pick these up is, of course, they're Vintage Masters, and that's going to go off sale next month. In case you didn't know, that's why I'm recommending Vintage Masters. They're going off sale next month. But it is a 100% mandatory card in Stacks, and Stacks is a very competitive deck. In fact, I think at, what was it, Eternal Weekend, I think, from 2013, first and second place decks were, well, first place was Merfolk, second place was Stacks. So Stacks was in the final, so it's a real deck, it's a competitive deck. In fact, the guy who was playing Stacks had won several Vintage tournaments playing Stacks. So it's a real deck, it's a real thing, and it's not an optional card. It's 100% mandatory for Stacks. So pick yours up for $7.33. Our next buy recommendation is Mana Drain, also from Vintage Masters. I realize that I do not have the Vintage Masters versions pictured, but those pictures are much harder to find than I thought. So I'm just using the versions that I could find. But Mana Drain, $9.06 currently. It's pretty much the lowest it's been. So pick them up now. And it is banned in Legacy, but it is not restricted in Vintage. And it's just one of those cards that's like iconic. I mean, it's like Counterspell, but purely better. There's nothing worse about Mana Drain than Counterspell. In the old days, yeah, the mana was actually supposed to be a drawback if you talk to R&D about that. But yeah, it was originally a drawback, which is kind of funny. But anyway, now with the new mana rules, you know, mana burn rules that don't, or the lack thereof mana burn rules, I guess, it's freaking sweet. So anyway, pick it up. I think, honestly, of the cards listed, I think this one's going to be the least profitable over the long term. Because, I mean, yeah, they're all going to go up. Don't get me wrong. They're all going to go up. But I think you're going to have a higher percentage. And you got to stay diversified. That's the thing. Got to stay diversified. That's why I'm recommending this. Otherwise, I would just say, go buy, you know, something else. Spend every dollar you've got on one card, because that's the best card to invest in. You can't do that. You got to diversify. And that's why we're recommending Mana Drain. But I think of these, this is not the strongest of the investments. So don't take all your money and put it in Mana Drain because it's cheap. That's not a good idea. And the other thing you got to remember about it is I know the first two recommendations aren't played in Legacy because they don't have they're banned. But this is also banned. But look at it in Vintage. It's not mandatory for a popular deck or a common deck or a competitive deck. It's just a good card, an all-around good card. So does it really have the same kind of pull that the other ones do? I don't think so. But it's a great card. I still think it's a great investment. But I'm just saying it's not as solid as the other two. All right, and our last buy recommendation for this week is the Vintage Masters Dual Lands. And I just pictured the Underground Sea and did not put a price because there are various prices. But all the Dual Lands will go up once they go off sale. They always do. Always, always, always. 100% of the time, they will go up. And I don't think... See, the Dual Lands, it's one of those things where I don't think they're going to release them online again in the next, 3 or 4 years, because there's just not it doesn't really promote their new stuff by releasing these older sets. But anyway, irrelevant. What is relevant is the Dual Lands will go up, and I'm going to especially recommend the blue Dual Lands. Anything with blue. Underground Sea is, of course, the most expensive. Tundra, Volcanic Island, and then and Tropical Island. Those are the 5 in no particular order, except Underground Sea, which is the most expensive. But pick them up. Pick up all of them. Pick up lots of them. They're going to go up. There's no way. I remember before, before there was even a Vintage to play in online, and Legacy was pretty weak. Like, there wasn't one legacy daily event per day, just because there weren't enough players to get, the 8 or whatever is required. And what would always happen was the events wouldn't fire. And back then, dual lands were $35-$40. Tundras were, I think, tropical islands and underground seas were like in the 40s or 50s. They were super expensive. So yeah, there's a bigger supply now, but there are more people playing the formats, so the market's just bigger. So pick up your dual lands, especially the blue ones. Those are the best ones. The worst ones is going to be Plateau, because before Vintage Masters, it was only about $7, and then Scrubland was only about $10. If I remember correctly, it was $10.06 is what they were going for a long time. So they're not those are the two least desirable, so I would pick up those last and kind of put more money into, or buy more copies of the other ones. So, unless, I don't know if it's going to be a thing. Like, I know that back in like 2000, I don't know, 4 or 5, I used to collect dual lands, and then when I'd build up a play set of all 10 dual lands for, the revised dual lands in paper, I would go online and I'd sell them and get like a good premium, because I don't know, people didn't want to deal with collecting them all. They just wanted the cards. So, I'd make a pretty respectable premium by doing that. So I don't know if that's going to ever happen online, where people are going to pay you extra because you got them all. But then again, it is online, so the marketplace, it's a lot easier to get to the market. It's not like, oh no, I have to wait till the, wherever I go to play is open this weekend, or, I have to wait till Friday night till, everybody I know is playing Friday Night Magic, or I have to wait until the next Vintage tournament or Legacy tournament or whatever. That doesn't really happen online. So, I think there's probably less value in collecting a set, a set of dual lands, unless you want to play with, of course, but that's a whole other story. So, blue dual lands. That's the big recommendation. But hey, if you have a lot of money into blue dual lands already, I wouldn't get any more than like 3 or 4 or 5 play sets probably. If you're not, a huge investor, probably I'd say like 5 is probably the max. And then I'd start going to the other ones until you had about 2/3 being blue and 1/3 not being blue. And then I would buy the cheaper ones, the Plateau and the Scrublands, until, that was maybe 25%. Or half the number of regular non-blue dual land sets that you have. I know that's confusing, but mostly blue, some of the other, and the least Plateaus and Scrublands is what I'm saying. So that's my recommendations for buying this week. Anything VMA is awesome that sees play, and anything that sees play in Legacy and is not restricted in Vintage is going to be awesome. So I recommend it. Alright, our first sell recommendation for this week is Voice of Resurgence. It has shot back up to $27.80. It was down to about, it was lower than it was right now. It was like $20. Now it's it's back up to $27.86, probably because the pod deck won. It was Pod and Splinter Twin and Pod 1, and Voices of 4 of in there, and it sees a lot of play in Standard. But I think it's all hype. It's going to rotate out of Standard. It's going to get hit very, very hard. Because think about this. Where does Voice of Resurgence see play other than Standard and Birthing Pod decks? It doesn't see play anywhere other than Birthing Pod decks. Just because in Modern, there's just so many ways to kill a creature that doesn't actually kill the creature. It removes it from the game, or rather exiles it, if I'm going to keep up with the times, I guess. It's going to be exiled, not removed from the game anymore. But that's the whole thing, is there's a lot of ways to kill it without actually having it, quote-unquote, die. So it'll get removed from the game or whatever happens. And you don't want that. That's bad in Modern. So, because you don't get your voice token. But I think that overall, it's a great card, don't get me wrong, but it sees most of its play in Standard and in Pod decks. And Pod deck 1, a lot of hype. So I think it's going to go. Anyway, it's rotating out of Standard. That's the big thing. When cards rotate out of Standard, that is the single biggest driving force of card prices on Magic Online. So I'm saying go ahead and get out of Voice right now. You know, it's at like a peak, and it's all downhill from here. There are no major tournaments until it rotates out of standard, and you know, then it won't be worth anything. So get rid of them now when you're riding a wave, and you know, make some money. All right, our next sell recommendation is Vraska the Unseen for $11.55. This is another one of the cards I saw play at the PTQ in a deck that did well, and everybody says, I want it now. You know, it's shiny, I want it, I guess, is what they're thinking, I don't know. But it's hype. It's not because the card's actually good, it's because someone did well with it. So, and I mean, I guess that's a pretty decent indicator, but someone would have to do consistently well with it for the price to go up more and more and more. So I would get out of Vraska, you know, make whatever you can on them right now, but unload them because they're going to drop real bad once Ravnica block rotates out of standard. All right, and our last sell recommendation this week is Sacred Foundry for currently $5.03. Go ahead and get rid of them now because it's pretty high in value considering where it has been, but it's I mean, considering where it could be rather, and but it rotates out of standard. And then you got to remember we talked about Plateau earlier being the very worst dual land. It's because no one plays it. That's why it's the cheapest, because nobody plays it. Yeah, there's some collectability associated there, and oh, it's cool to have a set, but no one plays it. And Sacred Foundry is the same way. I mean, I can't even think of a modern, you know, nobody plays Shocklands in Legacy and Vintage. No Tier 1 does. Tier 1 Legacy or Vintage decks play Shocklands because they have real live dual lands. But I wonder what decks play Sacred Foundry that aren't standard decks. And I'm trying to think, and the only one I can think of is UWR Control, or you know, UWR Geist, or I don't know what they call it, but you know, like the one with the Delver and the Geist, and you know, the quick efficient threats. But anyway, it's not even that good in those decks. Like I know I play most of the time when I play Modern, it's against a red white blue deck. It's Control. And every single time, it's all about the islands. That's all that matters. Islands. And I don't think I've ever seen them fetch a Sacred Foundry with a fetch land. Just because they want the blue mana. Because the deck is, realistically, it's just a blue deck with lightning bolts and lightning helixes. That's what it is. But, so when you have a blue deck with lightning helixes and lightning bolts, your Sacred Foundries are the least important land. So that's just me. That's my opinion on that regarding Sacred Foundry. But anyway, the point is, it's going to rotate out of standard, and it's not played anywhere but standard. So it's going to drop in value. I would unload them now, buy them again after they rotate. They'll be real cheap. So, and that's it for the sell recommendations this week. Now we're going to move on to the speculation station. This week, we're speculating on a lot of question marks. And but that's kind of what it is. That's what this section's all about. It's about what are we doing here? What are we thinking of? What's our ideas? And here's one thing I will tell you that I've noticed about Magic lately. That Theros block and M15, and hopefully cons. We don't know yet, but I'm hoping cons. Is look at Black. They have so much cool stuff. But you know, I mean, yeah, there's mono black that's been played since, you know, Theros came out. Not that, because that's gonna, you know, all the Ravnica stuff's gonna rotate. But I think that overall, I think that Black has a lot of tools, and I think it's no one's taken the time yet to, you know, to build a deck and to play it and to do well at a large tournament to kind of put it on the map. That's my opinion about it right now. And so I think, like, that's why, you know, last time on Speculation Station I recommended Urborg. And then Urborg was definitely one of the recommendations. And that's why, was because of this. Black has so many tools. And it kind of runs me back in, like, I think it was Torment that you know, Black, it was like the Black set. And so, anyway, I just think that you might want to kind of look into that, see what you can do with your decks. And, you know, hey, if you're looking to take some, you know, extra speculative, real risky risk, and, you know, of course, these are totally speculative, and I'm not saying that these are the best investments. I'm saying these are the most risky investments, but I made them. And if you want to, you can, but I'm not telling you, oh, if you don't, you're not going to make any money. I'm telling you that if you don't, well, okay. And I'm saying if I make money, it's because I got lucky. That's really what this is about. But anyway, that's what I've noticed about, the game as a game. And I will tell you one thing about it. This is about as close to, shot calling as I get. So, saying, oh, this card will be good. I think this card's going to be good. This is about as close we're going to get. Black might be good. So, because I don't think it works. I don't think that works to, try and call cards like that, and it's just not going to happen. So anyway, but I just noticed that black has a lot of tools, and it could be something that, could be good, could work out. So, if you think so too, look at it for yourself and tell me what you think. If you disagree, let me know. I'm interested in what you guys have to say. So leave it in the comments or email me or whatever. So, anyway, that's it for Speculation Station this week. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for Episode 9 of Ferocious Finance, presented by MagicGatheringStrat. And as always, I am your host, Ferocioussllama. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can follow me on Twitter, friend me on Facebook, or you can email me directly at mtgconfidant@gmail.com. Or leave me a comment in the YouTube comments below, and I'll answer any of your questions. I try to get on there 3-4 times a week. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you guys next time.